Sit down. I've known since your second week.
Since my second week. Then why did you let me clean your floors?
Because I wanted to see how long you'd stay.
There is a house in Myers Park on the west side of Queens Road with 14,000 square feet under one roof and 6 people on staff to keep it clean. For 11 weeks, one of those 6 was a 59-year-old woman who arrived before 7 every morning, took the back stair because that is what the staff did, and got down on a bad left knee to clean a bathroom on the 2nd floor. She was paid $22 an hour. On the roster, she was listed as V. Rivers. Everyone in the house called her Miss V. And the man who signed her paychecks, the man who owned that house and everything inside it, knew exactly who she was by the 9th day. He had it in writing. He read it on his phone at 4:40 in the afternoon, and then he put the phone in his pocket and let her keep working. She came to that door on a Tuesday morning in March, carrying a folder she had put together at a copy shop in Baltimore, a driver's license, a Social Security card, 2 references from a hotel near the Inner Harbor, where she had supervised housekeeping for 19 years. She was 59 years old, and she was applying for a job that would require her to be on her knees 6 hours a day, and she had rehearsed the answers to questions nobody ended up asking her. The house manager, a woman named Delphine Boykin, read the name at the top of the application. She read it twice. Then she set the folder down, looked at the woman standing on the other side of the service entrance, and said nothing at all about what she had just seen. Delphine hired her that morning. She wrote V. Rivers on the schedule, assigned her the 2nd floor and the linen rotation, and left out of the file the one thing she knew that nobody else in that house was supposed to know. The kitchen alone was bigger than the apartment the new hire rented on West Lafayette Avenue. The dining room seated 18. The man who lived there was 40 years old, worth just over $2 billion, and engaged to be married in October. His name was Desmond Kane, and the woman in the gray uniform, the one they called Miss V, the one who cleaned his bathroom every morning at 7:15, was his mother. She had not stood in the same room as her son since 1991. That is the part most people stop at, and it is the least interesting thing about this story, because a woman taking a job in her own son's house raises 3 questions, and only one of them actually matters. The first, why would she do it that way? She had his address. She could have walked up the front steps and rung the bell like anybody else, and instead she filled out an application. The second, what was she looking for? She told Delphine she wanted to know what kind of woman her son was marrying. That was the reason she gave. It was not the reason. And then there is the third question. When it all came apart, 11 weeks later, in a kitchen at 10 o'clock at night, why was she the one apologizing? The answer to that last one is the reason I am telling you this at all. Desmond Kane was raised 9 miles and 1 entire world away from the house he would eventually buy on Queens Road, Kennesaw Drive, off Beatty's Ford Road, in a brick house with a carport his grandmother could not afford to repair. Eula Kane worked in a school cafeteria for 26 years and raised him on that salary and a small survivor's benefit that arrived on the 3rd of every month. She hung his church clothes on the closet door the night before, so there would be no discussion on Sunday morning. She walked him to the bus stop every day until he was 11 years old and finally told her he did not want her to anymore, and she stopped that same morning without a word about it, which he understood much later was the most generous thing she ever did for him. He was a quiet child, Teachers wrote it on his report cards like a compliment. He asked about his mother 4 times. He would tell people that number. Years later, in the flat way a man recites something he has counted, once at 6, once at 9, once at 12, and once at 15, standing in the kitchen doorway on Kennesaw Drive, with his voice cracking in the middle of the sentence. Eula's answer never changed and never expanded. She went on up the road. That was the whole of it. No name, no city, no explanation, no photograph anywhere in that house. And after the 4th time, Desmond stopped asking, and that silence did not stay a silence. It became a way of being. He went to Johnson C. Smith and graduated in 2007. He started 2 companies that failed and one that did not. He sold it in 2021. He does not raise his voice, ever, and the people who work for him have learned that this is not calm. Vernita Rivers left Charlotte in the fall of 1991. She was 25 years old. What the neighborhood believed, and what they went on believing for the next 3 decades, was that she got on a Greyhound at the station on West Trade and did not look back, and that she had chosen a life over a child. That version traveled well. It was simple, it fit what people already thought, and there was nobody willing to correct it. She went to Baltimore because a cousin had a couch there. She worked in a hospital laundry for 6 years, standing in heat that ruined her sinuses permanently, and then she moved to a hotel near the Inner Harbor and stayed 19 years, working her way up to supervising a floor staff of 14. She rented a studio on West Lafayette Avenue and kept it clean enough for a guest. For 9 years she sent a money order on the first Friday of every month, made out to Eula Kane, mailed to the house on Kennesaw Drive. She never once mentioned it on the phone during the 4 or 5 calls a year that Eula would accept. In 2019, Eula died. Vernita found out 11 days after the funeral, from a notice on a funeral home website she had checked every few months for years. She did not come. She sat on the edge of her bed in Baltimore in her work uniform and did not come. And then in the fall of 2024, standing in the checkout line at a CVS on North Charles Street, she saw her son's face on the cover of a business magazine. She looked at it for a long moment and put it back on the rack and paid for what she came for. She went back the next day and bought it. Camille Sutton was 36 years old and had been a pediatric nurse practitioner for 11 of them. She grew up in Sumter, South Carolina, in a house where her grandmother left before 6 in the morning to clean other people's homes and came back after dark, and where nobody was ever permitted to describe that work as anything other than work. Camille did 12-hour shifts. She met Desmond Kane in a conference room when his company was funding a new pediatric wing, and she was the only person present willing to tell him the floor plan was wrong, that they had put the family waiting area where the crash carts needed to move, and that whoever drew it had never watched a child code. He called her the following week. He said it was about the floor plan. It was not about the floor plan. She wore her hospital badge on a lanyard around the house because she forgot to take it off, and it hung there while she ate standing up at 11 at night. In 14,000 square feet, with 6 people on staff, she had never once in her life let another woman carry something she was capable of carrying herself. And Vernita Rivers, who had come 400 miles with a folder from a copy shop and a plan she had not fully admitted to herself, had already decided long before she met her that she was going to find something wrong with this woman. There are rules in a house like that, and none of them are written anywhere. Staff use the back stair. Staff do not speak first. Staff are addressed by their first names and are expected to answer with a title. The work is arranged so that it happens in the hours when it will not be observed, which means that the person cleaning your bathroom knows a great deal about you and you know almost nothing about her, and this arrangement is understood by everyone to be normal. Vernita had spent 19 years supervising exactly this system in a hotel. She knew how to be invisible, the way a tradesman knows his tools. What she had not accounted for was what invisibility would give her. Every morning at 7:15, she cleaned her son's bathroom. She learned which side of the bed he slept on, because only one side was ever disturbed. She learned that he left his watch face down on the counter. She learned that he ate the same breakfast 6 days a week, and that on Sundays he did not eat at all until the afternoon. And she learned, standing there with a cloth in her hand, that he took his coffee the way Eula had taken hers, black with 1 sugar stirred exactly twice, a thing nobody had taught him, and nobody could have, because it was simply what he had watched his whole childhood. She stood in that bathroom and she cried about it once, quietly, and then finished the floor. On the 9th day, the security firm the household used ran its standard background check on all new hires, as it did every quarter without anyone requesting it. The file came back to Desmond Kane's phone at 4:40 in the afternoon. The first time they were in the same hallway was in her 3rd week. She heard him before she saw him, and there was nowhere to go, and so she did what the rules required, which was to stand slightly to the side with the linen basket against her hip and wait for him to pass. He slowed. He looked directly at her, and he said, "Morning, Miss V," and kept walking toward the stair, and did not turn around. She stood in that hallway with her heart going and read his calm exactly the way she needed to read it. He does not know. He looked right at my face, and he does not know me. She had been 6 years gone from his memory before he was old enough to hold on to anything, and 34 years is a long time for a face to change, and she told herself this on the 2nd floor landing and believed it. You know something she did not. You have known it since the 4th minute of this story. He had read her date of birth. He had read the address on Kennesaw Drive. He had read his own grandmother's name printed on the same line as hers, and then he had gone downstairs to dinner. From that morning on, Vernita had a ritual she never told anyone about. She would step into his closet, put her flat palm against the sleeve of a coat, and hold it there for about 4 seconds. Then she would take her hand back and get on with the work. She started watching Camille in the 4th week, which was the reason she had given herself for coming, and she watched her the way a woman watches somebody she has already convicted. What she found instead was small and relentless. Camille knew the names of all 6 staff inside her first month, and used them correctly, and did not use them in that bright performing way that some people use a housekeeper's name in front of guests. In the 5th week, she noticed Vernita favoring the left knee on the stairs. She did not ask about it, and she did not make an announcement. She had the linen storage moved down 1 floor and told the house manager it was a workflow issue. And then one night, near the end of the 6th week, she came in from a shift after 11, still wearing the lanyard, and found Vernita alone in the kitchen, and instead of taking her plate upstairs, she sat down at the island and ate standing up food beside her, and talked to her about nothing for 40 minutes. Vernita went home to West Lafayette Avenue that night, angry. She could not have explained it to anybody. It is only that it had been so much easier to drive down here believing the woman would be awful. In the 7th week, a tennis bracelet went missing from the 2nd floor. It belonged to nobody in the house. It had been left on a dresser by a guest. Desmond's business partner was there for dinner, and he said the thing that men like that always say, in the tone they always say it in, which is not an accusation, and is entirely an accusation. He asked who had been in the room, and the kitchen went quiet, and 6 people who worked in that house stood in it looking at the floor, and Vernita Rivers, 59 years old, 19 years a supervisor, felt her face go hot, in a way it had not gone hot since she was a girl. And Camille Sutton had not said a word yet. What Camille did was not a speech, This is the part that mattered to Vernita, and it is the part that most people get wrong when they imagine how decency actually looks. Camille did not defend the staff emotionally. She did it the way she would have handled a bad handoff on a ward. She asked when the bracelet had last been physically seen and by whom. She asked the guest to describe the dresser. She said, out loud, in front of everyone, that the cleaning rotation put no member of staff on that floor after Tuesday afternoon, and that the room had been occupied continuously since. Then she said to the business partner, in a completely level voice, that nobody in this house was going to be searched, and that she would not be discussing it again. And then she went and found it herself, 40 minutes later, in the inside pocket of a jacket Desmond had worn to the airport. She did not come back to the kitchen to announce it. She did not seek out the 6 people who had been standing there to let them know she had cleared their names. She handed it to the guest, said good night, and went upstairs. Vernita heard about it from Delphine the next morning while they were folding. She had come 400 miles to find something wrong with this woman, and she had failed completely. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The 2 women talked properly for the first time a few nights after that, at the same kitchen island, near midnight. Camille asked her how long she had been doing this kind of work, and Vernita told her the truth. 25 years, most of it supervising. Camille asked whether she had children. Vernita said 1, a son. Camille asked where he was, and Vernita, who had rehearsed 100 versions of this conversation in a studio apartment in Baltimore and had never once rehearsed this one, heard herself say, "He's grown, he did well for himself." And Camille smiled at that with real warmth and said the thing that took the floor out from under her. She said, "He's lucky." In the 11th week, Vernita decided to leave, not dramatically and not with any confrontation. She would give her notice on Friday, work out the 2 weeks if they wanted her to, and go back up I-85 with the thing she had come for, which was a face and a voice and the knowledge that her son took his coffee like her mother did. She wrote him a letter on hotel notepaper she had brought down from Baltimore, 3 pages, and she folded it and put it in the pocket of her apron and carried it there for 4 days while she worked out how to leave it somewhere he would find it after she was gone. She never got to Friday. On Thursday night, at a few minutes past 10, Desmond Kane came into his own kitchen, which he almost never did, and closed the door behind him, which he never did at all. Vernita was at the sink. He asked her to sit down. And she turned around with her hands still wet, and she looked at his face and understood, all at once and far too late, that the calm she had been reading for 11 weeks had never once been what she thought it was. He told her he had known since her 2nd week. He was not cruel about it, and he did not raise his voice, because he does not. He simply laid it out in order, the way he would have laid out a set of figures, that the security firm ran background checks quarterly on household staff, that the file had come to him at 4:40 in the afternoon on her 9th day, that it contained her full legal name, her date of birth, her last known Charlotte address on Kennesaw Drive, and, on the line for next of kin from an old record, the name Eula Kane. He said he had read it standing in his office. He said he had read it twice. And then he had gone downstairs to have dinner with Camille and had said nothing to her about it either, that night or any night since. And then he approved the hire. That is the sentence Vernita could not get past, standing at that sink with her hands wet. He read it, he understood it completely, and then he let the schedule stand. 11 weeks. Her knee on his bathroom floor at 7:15 every morning, while he was 3 doors down putting on a watch, he left face down on the counter. She asked him the only question there was. She asked him why he let her clean his floors, and Desmond said, "Because I wanted to see how long you'd stay." He also told her, in the same even tone, that he had approved a change to the second-floor rotation that was to take effect in week 12. It would have added a second bathroom to her workload. Do not make him a monster yet. I want you to sit with what he actually was, because it is worse than a monster and it is far more common. He was 5 years old when she left. He was 40 when she came back. In between, he had constructed an entire human being out of the raw material of not needing her, and every part of that man, the 2 failed companies and the one that worked, and the flat voice and the empty office walls, was load-bearing. Her showing up as staff did not read to him as sacrifice. It read as evidence. She had come 400 miles. She had stood in his hallway. He had said her name to her face, and she still could not say the word to his. So he let her stay in the position she had chosen for herself, and he told himself, with real conviction, that he was simply allowing her to make her own decision. He was not punishing her. That is what he believed, and I think he believed it honestly. He was waiting for her to quit. He was waiting for the 11th week, or the 12th, or the 15th, for the morning she did not come in, so that he could finally, after 34 years, be right about the woman who went on up the road. And he would have been. She had the letter in her apron pocket that night. She had already decided to go. He would have been right about her for the rest of his life, except that Camille Sutton went into a storage unit off Wilkinson Boulevard 3 days later to clear out the last of Eula Kane's things. There was a box. It was not hidden and it was not marked. It was a plastic tub with a lid, sitting under a folded card table, and inside it were 9 years of money order receipts, held together with rubber bands that had gone hard and split, and 41 letters. Every one of them addressed to Desmond in Vernita's handwriting. Every one of them opened. Every one of them read, some of them clearly more than once, refolded along the original creases and put back in the envelope. And not a single one of them ever given to him. Camille sat on the concrete floor of that unit and read 4 of them before she stopped and put the lid back on and drove home without calling anyone. Here is what happened in 1991, which is the thing this whole story was built on top of, and which nobody in it had ever been told. Vernita Rivers did not go on up the road. She was put out. Eula Kane, who was 51 years old at the time and terrified in ways she never described to anybody, made a decision about what kind of woman her daughter was going to be permitted to be in her grandson's life. And she made it in an afternoon, and it held for 34 years. And then she made a second decision, which is the one that actually did the damage. She decided, somewhere along the way, that she had been wrong, and she never told him. That is the hardest part of this. Both of those women loved that boy. One of them had to be erased for the other one to raise him. There was no embrace. I want to be accurate about that, because you have seen the version of this story where there is one. On a Sunday in June, Desmond found Vernita in the kitchen, in her own clothes, for the first time in 11 weeks, waiting for a car to take her to the bus station. He did not apologize. He could not. The machinery for it was not in him yet and may not be for years. What he did was pull out a chair at the kitchen island, the staff counter, not the dining room table that seats 18, and sit down across from her. Camille came in a few minutes later and set 2 plates down and left the room without saying anything. And they sat there, a 59-year-old woman and a 40-year-old man, and they ate almost nothing and said almost nothing, and neither one of them got up. Families do not usually break over the cruel thing somebody did. They break over the true thing nobody said. She spent 34 years being the woman who left. He spent 11 weeks letting her prove it. So tell me honestly, and think about it before you answer, which one of them do you forgive first?